I know that as you wrote the book, and you included a lot of stories about these people who are doing hard things, and you're highlighting them. You know, can you share more stories about these special youth?
Yeah, do you want to tell the story you tell about Connor?
Yeah, yeah, we share so many stories, you know, both at our website and in the book, you know, at the conferences. We feel like the most effective thing we can do, you know, is to share stories and let young people see what this looks like, because you know, when they see another young person who's just a lot like themselves, you know, doing hard things, making the impact, they realize that it's possible for them too. And so one of the stories I'll share is of a young man named Connor. Connor Kress. He lives in Atlanta. He was, I think, 14 years old, 15 maybe, when he came home from school one day, and there was a magazine on the kitchen counter. You know, we always would grab, you know, whatever new magazines there were, run up to his room, and he was just, you know, looking through it, and he was just, you know, grabbed by the pictures of young, you know, of children in Africa and around the world who, you know, their bodies were just shrunken and shriveled from lack of food, you know, and especially lack of water, of clean water to drink. And he read about how there's young people and children who are so dehydrated that they can't even cry tears because there's just not enough, you know, moisture in their bodies for that to happen. And he was just, you know, inside he was just screaming, like, has anyone done anything for these kids? Are they even still alive? You know, how can this be? How can this happen? And then he felt like, you know, God just pointed at him and said, Connor, look at how much I have blessed you. Look at how much you have. You know, what are you going to do about it? And so for him it was, you know, as this 15-year-old kid just saying, you know, having his eyes open to, you know, just the broken beauty of the world and seeing that God had a calling on him to make a difference, to be the change. And so he, you know, he prayed about it a lot that summer, you know, just trying to figure out, how can I help? What can I do? I'm just 15, going to school in Atlanta. How can I help these people across the world? And it was, you know, praying that God, you know, gave him an idea, and he just thought, you know, I could sell bracelets to raise money to dig wells in Africa. And it was just this random idea. You know, I thought it sounded kind of crazy. Didn't even know how much it cost, you know, to dig a well in Africa. You know, had no idea what he was, you know, really doing. But he went to 4 of his friends and said, guys, listen, you know, here's my heart. Here's what God's been showing me. Will you help me? And they all were just, you know, enthusiastically said, absolutely, we'll help you. And so they started this. They started an organization called Dry Tears. And I'm actually wearing one of their bracelets right here, the blue Dry Tears bracelet. And they've just sold thousands and thousands of bracelets. You know, they started selling water bottles and T-shirts. They've raised enough money to dig 4 different wells in Africa and provided water to about 20,000 people. And this is just, you know, 4 guys, you know, 5 guys down in Atlanta. Right. 15, 16 years old.
Yeah. Wow. And another story, we'll go ahead and share another one. There's so many in the book, but here's another one of our favorites. We'll leave that for them to read the book. But one of our other favorite stories is the story of a girl named Heidi. And we got to know Heidi when we were working on the political campaigns in Alabama when we were 17. We were the grassroots directors for 4 statewide campaigns. And Heidi was our county coordinator for one of the largest counties in the state. And we always would say that, you know, if all of our county coordinators were like Heidi, we'd be in just terrific shape, because she was just excellent. We'd throw stuff at her. She'd turn it around. We'd tell her, do this, make these calls, get this facility, talk to this person, and she'd get it done. And then it wasn't until close to the end of the campaign that we realized that Heidi wasn't who we thought she was. We had met her family at the campaign kickoff meeting. She had an older sister who was 24. And we thought Heidi was the 24-year-old sister. But the real Heidi, turned out, was 17. And so our first reaction was, oh my goodness, I can't believe we asked so much of her. And then our second thought was, wait a second, we're the Rebelution guys. This is what it's all about. We expected more of her. She rose to meet those expectations. And then, of course, we also remembered, wait a second, we're 17 too, and we're the grassroots directors for these campaigns. But what we love about that story is because it didn't end there. Even then, we still had low expectations, because we assumed, oh, well, Heidi must be, you know, this type A, you know, this is her 10th campaign. She lives on the phone. She's been doing this for forever. And it wasn't until the very end of the campaign, we went down, did an event there that she organized for us, and we stayed with her family, and her parents and her family were telling us that Heidi was actually extremely introverted, and she hated talking on the phone even to people she knew. And yet they had just been watching with amazement these last few months as shy Heidi was doing all these things that they never would have expected her to do, that she never would have expected herself to even be able to do. And she wrote to us at the end of the campaign and said, she found out about do hard things and that battle cry of the Rebelution, and she was laughing and said, you know, do hard things is exactly what I've been doing these last few months. And she told us that God had taken her understanding of what she was capable of and wrapped it 3 times around a bigger perspective of what's possible when she trusted Him enough to step outside her comfort zone. And that story was so important, because it really, that was when it clicked for us that these ideas work in real life, and they don't just work for guys who start blogs and, you know, write books and do conferences. They work for shy people like Heidi, who hated to talk on the phone and yet were able to step outside their comfort zone and discover how much they were really capable of when they trusted God enough to obey Him.